Hello everyone and welcome to Torah Clicks. I'm recording this video today in order to roll out a new series of shiurim that I'd like to call Mishnah Minutes. It's my hope to create a space here on YouTube where if somebody has a few minutes of time, instead of tuning in to the latest funny video of somebody with a forklift collapsing an entire warehouse or something of that nature, instead you could tune in over here, spend a few minutes, learn a Mishnah, get the schus of Talmud Torah, and instead of just getting a couple of laughs, you could earn Chaye Olam Haba through the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. In a few short minutes, hopefully, we could learn a Mishnah. Now, the first Masechta that I want to do is Masechtas Bava Kama. And I would like to dedicate the learning of Masechtas Bava Kama in memory of a very, very, very special woman. We knew her as Savta Sarah. Her name was Sarah Reich. She was a dear, dear, dear neighbor of ours for many, many years. And this woman was an incredibly special woman. She lived with the Rabbeinu Shalom every minute of her life. This was a woman who, like the pasuk says, Shivisi Hashem lenegdi samid. You should place the Rabbeinu Shalom before you at all times. Savta Sarah had the Rabbeinu Shalom in front of her every second of her life. She would come outside in the morning, hold the mezuzah, and daven to Hashem. You know, the Rambam says that the mitzvah of tefillah is a mitzvah daraisa. So the Rambam says, before the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah, who gave us most of the davening that we have, they're the ones who gave us the format of the davening that we have. How did they daven? So the Rambam says, everybody went and asked the Rabbeinu Shalom for whatever they needed. So for a person to have a relationship with the Rabbeinu Shalom, where he or she just goes to the Rabbeinu Shalom and asks for whatever they need. The problem is that over time, people lost that. So the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah had to come and they had to give us a way to daven. Imagine, they had to instruct us on how to daven. Savta Sarah didn't need that. Savta Sarah looked up to Shemayim. She spoke to the Rabbeinu Shalom one-on-one. She asked the Rabbeinu Shalom for what she needed. You came to her, you asked her how she's doing. Toda lakel. Thanks to God. You couldn't leave the house without getting a bracha. Yevarechecha min hashamayim. She was an inspiration. We miss her terribly. And I would very much like that in the schus of the Torah learning that we do here, her neshama should have an aliyah. And also that Yibadal L'chaim, her dear husband Saba Yehuda, the Rabbeinu Shalom should give him arichas yamim v'shanim, give him the strength to carry on. Saba Yehuda himself is a survivor of 2 brutal years in Auschwitz, and we need people like him. And Saba Yehuda, we don't have Savta Sarah to give us brachas now. Now we need your brachas. So with that, let's begin Masechtas Bava Kama. Now, by Torah law, a person is forbidden to do damage either to another person or to another person's property. Now, in various psukim in the Torah, what the Torah does is it gives us different examples of a person's property doing damage to somebody else or to somebody else's property. And by doing so, what the Torah Akdosha did was it divided up different types of damagers into different categories. And we'll see what that means. Each one of these categories has a property that's unique to it. And whatever categories we find in a pasuk in the Torah, we call those avos, literally fathers. It means a primary category. Something that we learn, something that's similar to one of those categories. So we know that you're liable for that type of damager also. That's called a tolda, or offspring of the primary category. So let's take a look at the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Arba avos nezikim. There are 4 primary categories of damagers. What are they? So the first one is hashor. Literally, hashor means the ox. Now, our Mishnah is referring specifically here to an ox that does damage through its feet. So this is what's called the damager of regel, feet. What does that mean? Well, when an ox walks, it's going to trample whatever it happens to step on. And oxen are not very discriminatory over what they walk on. So if you have an ox, and your ox goes into your neighbor's property and tramples your neighbor's tomatoes, you're liable to pay for your neighbor's tomatoes. That's the mazik of regel. So the first one again is hashar, which is a reference to regel. The second one is v'habor, and the pit. A bar is a pit. If somebody goes into the Rishus Harabim, into the public thoroughfare, and he digs a ditch, he digs a pit, and somebody else's animal comes, falls into that pit, and is harmed, you're liable, the one who dug the pit, is going to be liable to the damage that was done to that other person's animal. The third one, v'hamaveh. Now the word maveh is interesting. Literally it means that which is sometimes revealed and sometimes concealed. V'hamaveh. What is this a reference to? This is a reference to an animal doing damage through its teeth. It means the damager of Shane, because the teeth are sometimes revealed, like that, and sometimes concealed, depending on the position of the lips. So v'hamaveh is the damager of Shane. What's the damager of Shane? Well, if my animal goes into my friend's property and eats my friend's tomatoes, so he did the damage of Shane. Now, it's not referring, let's say, to an animal that bites somebody. That would not be included in the category of Shane. That would actually be included in the category of Keren, which literally means a horn. That's an animal that does damage in a way that's not particularly normal for it. It's not normal for an ox to go ahead and bite somebody. If the law of an ox that bites somebody we'll discuss at a different time when we discuss the mazik of Keren, that's not represented in this Mishnah. Over here, maveh again means Shane. It means an animal that eats something that belongs to somebody else. And lastly, the fourth category is v'hahever, and fire. Somebody makes a fire, and that fire gets out of control and burns up items that belong to somebody else. He's liable for that damage. Now, the Mishnah over here wonders, why does the Torah have to give us psukim for each one of these different categories? And the answer is going to be that, like we said, each one of these categories has properties that are unique to it. And therefore, each one of these categories, there's a reason why we might think that you're liable for this type of damage, but you might not be liable for a different type of damage. Therefore, if the Torah would only have told us one of them, we would say, okay, you're liable for that kind of damage because of its unique property. But that doesn't mean necessarily that you're liable for a different type of damage. And now the Mishnah spells this out. The Mishnah says as follows: Lo harei hashor kaharei hamaveh. The damager of shor, which we explained is a regel, an animal that does damage through its feet, is not like the damager of maveh. It's not like the damager of Shane. And therefore, there's a reason why we might think that you're chayav for regel, but you're not chayav for Shane. Therefore, the Torah couldn't just give us a pasuk for regel. We wouldn't know Shane. So the Torah had to give us a pasuk for each one. Now, what are these reasons? So, the Gemara is going to explain as follows. The damager of regel is very, very, very common, because as long as an animal is walking, he's trampling. Therefore, it's incredibly common for an ox to do damage, or another animal, to do damage to other person's things while it walks. Since it's very common, we understand, when the Torah tells you you're chayav for regel, the Torah is saying, look, you have an animal, it's incumbent upon you to prevent your animal from doing damage which is very, very normal. Certainly you should know that your animal has the potential to trample something that belongs to somebody else. So if the Torah would only tell me regel, I would say, okay, you're liable for the damage of regel because that's very, very common. So I need to know that my animal could do damage with regel. But Shane is not quite as common. An animal is not constantly eating. An animal eats when it's hungry. It doesn't eat when it's not hungry. So if the Torah would only tell me that I'm chayiv for regel, would I know that I'm chayiv for Shane? No. Therefore, the Torah had to give me a pasuk for both. And the Mishnah says vice versa. V'lo yarei hamaveh, and the damager of maveh, the damager of Shane, is not like karei hashor. It's not like the damager of shor, of regel. Why? Tell you why. The Gemara says that Shane, what's unique to the damager of Shane, is that there is pleasure to the animal, and there's pleasure to the animal's owner when the animal damages through the damager of Shane. An animal is driven by hunger to go do the damage of Shane. It's hungry. There's a driving force that's making it go ahead and do that damage. Also, the owner of the animal derives pleasure from the shane that's done by its animal. If my animal goes into my neighbor's backyard and eats 10 pounds of tomatoes, that's 10 pounds less that I have to feed my animal. So I got pleasure from the fact that my animal ate, and my animal was driven by hunger to go do the damage. If the Torah would tell me that I'm liable for that kind of damage, I wouldn't necessarily know that I'm liable for the damage of regel. By regel, there's no pleasure to me as the owner of the animal from the fact that my animal went for a walk, and there's really no pleasure to the animal either. The animal's just walking around. It's not driven by the need of hunger. So I wouldn't know that you're chayav for that. Now the Mishnah continues, and the Mishnah says, okay, so I understand that I need a pasuk for regel, and I understand that I also need a pasuk for shane. But maybe that's enough. Maybe if I would have those two psukim, I could learn out from those two damagers that I'm also liable for other damagers. So the Mishnah says, no. And these two damagers, the damage of regel and the damage of shane, they're both referring to live animals. So these two damagers, which are speaking of something that has life to it, they are not similar kaharei ha'esh, to the damager of fire, she'ein by ruach chayim, which is not a live animate thing. Now, why does that make a difference? Very simple. If I own an animal which is an animate object, which is something that has its own das, it has its own mind, so over there, wait a second, you have a sentient being that's capable of doing things on its own, you have to prevent it from doing damage. Eish is not a sentient being. Maybe somehow the responsibility and the liability for Eish is not the same as that for a sentient being. So therefore I need a pasuk for Eish as well. It wouldn't be enough to have a pasuk for Shane and Regel. You also need a pasuk for Eish. Now the Mishnah continues. There's one more. These three mazikim, Regel, Shane, and Eish, are all unique in that they travel. They all travel. Shane and Regel, that's an animal that travels on its own. But Eish also travels. We know that Eish, fire spreads. So these three, Darka Leilach Olahazik, it's their way to go ahead and travel and do damage. They are not like Kaharei Habur, like a pit, She'ein Darka Leilach Olahazik. A pit can't travel. You dig a pit in Rosh Hashanah, it stays right there. So, if I would have a pasuk for Shane, and a pasuk for Regel, and a pasuk for Eish, I would say to myself, okay, so the Torah holds me liable for damagers that have the ability to go travel and go do damage to somebody else. But a pit that cannot travel, maybe over there I'm not liable. Says the Mishnah, no, over there you need a pasuk for, that's why you need a pasuk for bar as well. Now the Mishnah ends off by saying that while all four of these different damagers do have properties that are unique to them, they also share a commonality. Hatzara shava shebehen. The thing that is equal to all of these four categories is shedarkan lahazik. It is their way to do damage. All of these four categories are damagers. An ox, if it is unguarded, it will do damage. It will do damage by trampling. It will do damage by eating. A fire, if you don't protect a fire is going to do damage. If you dig a pit and you fail to cover it, it's going to do damage. So the commonality of all these four categories is that they are damagers. And therefore the Mishnah says, Ushmirasan alecha. And it is incumbent upon you, as the owner of the damager, or in the case of the pit, the creator of the damager, and by creating it you become its owner. So it is incumbent upon you to watch it, to guard it, and prevent it from doing damage. Ukishahizik, and if you fail to do so, and it does do damage, Chav hamazik, the mazik, you as the owner, you are liable, l'shalem, to pay, tashlume nezek, the value of the damage that has been done, b'meitav ha'aretz, from the best of your real estate. In other words, if you're not going to be able to pay money, if you're not going to pay with cash, and you don't have assets to pay with, the only assets you have is real property, So then when the court collects from your real property to pay the one who you inflicted damage upon, they're going to take from the best of your property. They're not going to take the garbage property. They're going to take from the best property that you have in order to pay for that damage. Thank you for joining me for this inaugural shir. I hope you enjoy, and I hope you'll continue to join me for the learning of many, 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 many more Mishnahs to come. Have a wonderful day.